It was a bright afternoon in Los Angeles, the kind of day when everything feels calm and ordinary. Jake Paul, dressed casually in a plain white hoodie and cap, had just finished filming a short vlog with a few friends outside a local cafe. No crowds, no drama, just a normal moment in his hectic life. But that peace wouldn't last long. As Jake walked toward his car, a police cruiser pulled up beside him. The officer inside looked tense, suspicious even. He rolled down his window slowly and called out, "Hey! You there, step away from the car." Jake stopped, surprised. "Officer, this is my car." "Is something wrong?" The cop stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of authority that demanded attention. But there was something else in his tone, arrogance, the kind that made people feel small. "Don't get smart with me," the officer snapped. "We've had reports of suspicious activity around here." Jake raised an eyebrow, trying to stay calm. Suspicious activity. "I was just filming a vlog, sir." But the cop wasn't listening. He circled Jake's car, glancing at him with an almost mocking smirk. A few bystanders had stopped to watch. "Vlog, huh? So you think being some internet clown gives you a pass to do whatever you want?" The words stung, but Jake didn't react. He knew better than to fuel the fire. "No, sir. I'm just minding my business." The officer moved closer, inches from Jake's face now. His voice lowered, sharp, condescending. "Watch your tone, son. You may be used to people cheering your name, but not here. Here you follow my rules." Jake's jaw tightened, but he stayed composed. The tension was thick, the kind that makes everyone nearby hold their breath. What Jake didn't know was that this encounter, this single moment of arrogance and disrespect, would spiral into something much bigger than anyone expected. The silence between Jake and the officer stretched. For a few seconds, the kind of silence that feels heavy, uncomfortable, and charged. The officer folded his arms, squinting at Jake with suspicion. "License and registration." Jake nodded calmly. "Sure, officer." "It's inside the car." He reached for the door handle, but the cop immediately barked, "Don't move!" The shout startled everyone nearby. Jake froze, hands raised slightly in the air. "I said don't move until I tell you to." People at the cafe turned their heads. A few of them pulled out their phones. The tension was unmistakable. Jake took a deep breath. "I'm not trying to be difficult, sir. I just want to show you my ID." The officer stepped closer, invading Jake's space. Eyes locked, jaw tight. "You YouTube guys think you can talk your way out of anything, huh?" "You act like you're untouchable," Jake tried to explain. "I'm not trying to talk my way out of anything. I'm cooperating, but it didn't matter." The cop wasn't looking for cooperation. He was looking for control. He walked around Jake, inspecting the car again, muttering under his breath. Figures. "Fancy car, loud personality." Same type every time. Jake's friends, standing a few feet away, started recording. One whispered, "Dude, this is getting weird." Jake turned slightly, trying to diffuse the tension. "Look, officer, I don't want any trouble. We're just filming content." "We have permits for this area," the officer scoffed. "Permits? You think showing me some paper gives you the right to block sidewalks and disrupt the peace?" Jake's tone stayed respectful, but his patience was thinning. "Sir, I didn't block anything." "There's no law against filming here," the officer smirked, stepping even closer, close enough for Jake to feel his breath. "You better watch that mouth, boy. You're not in front of a camera now." "You're in front of me," a collective murmur rippled through the onlookers. Everyone could see it. The cop wasn't enforcing the law anymore. He was flexing his power. Jake clenched his jaw, looked down, then back up with calm determination. "I respect the badge, sir. I really do. But respect works both ways." That one line, respectful yet firm, hit harder than Jake realized. The officer's face twitched, anger flashing in his eyes. He leaned in and hissed, "You trying to teach me how to do my job, Mr. Internet Star?" Jake didn't respond. He just held his ground. The cop walked back toward his cruiser, clearly agitated. A few bystanders whispered, "Man, that cop's going too far. Why is he treating him like that?" Within minutes, several people had started live streaming. The scene was now spreading online in real time. Jake could feel the weight of the cameras, the tension, the injustice. But he didn't flinch. He knew the world would see how he handled this. Then the officer turned back, pointing at Jake. "Put your hands on the car, now." Jake blinked. For what reason? "Don't question me. Hands on the car." Jake slowly placed his hands on the hood, the metal warm under the California sun. The officer patted him down aggressively, even though Jake hadn't resisted once. His friends protested from behind the line. He didn't do anything. "You're harassing him!" The cop ignored them. He kept muttering, "Let's see how your fans react when they see you in cuffs." Jake didn't move. Didn't argue. Didn't even roll his eyes. He just said quietly, "The truth always comes out, sir." "It always does." The crowd went quiet for a moment. Everyone could feel that something was about to happen, something big. Have you ever seen someone in power cross the line? It's hard to stay calm when you're being disrespected, but what would you do in Jake's place? Comment below where you're watching from, your city, your country, and tell me, would you walk away, or would you stand your ground? Back at the scene, the officer stepped back slightly, smirking like he'd just proven a point. Jake turned his head slowly toward him, eyes steady. "Are we done, officer?" "Not until I say we are," the cop snapped. The arrogance in his tone echoed through the crowd. And that's when one of Jake's fans shouted, "You know who that is, right?" "That's Jake Paul." The officer froze for a second, only a second, before masking his surprise with more hostility. "I don't care if he's the president. He's not above the law," the crowd murmured louder now, phones raised higher. The pressure was shifting, and the arrogant cop had no idea that every second of his behavior was being captured from every angle. What happened next would change everything. No one there could have imagined what would happen next, and how fast this arrogant cop would regret elbowing Jake Paul. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. A few people in the back were whispering Jake's name, others recording with trembling hands. The situation felt on edge, fragile, like one wrong move could make it explode. The officer's face was tight with irritation. He didn't like the attention. "Phones down," he barked. "Everyone, step back." No one moved. The sound of recording notifications and camera shutters filled the air. Jake turned slightly, still calm, but clearly uncomfortable. "Officer, I think this has gone far enough." "You've made your point," the cop sneered. "My point. You think you can tell me what my point is?" Jake took a slow breath, his voice steady. "I'm not trying to argue. I just don't understand why I'm being treated like this." The officer took a step forward, then another. His posture was aggressive now, his hand resting on his belt. "You don't understand because you think fame gives you privilege," he said sharply. "Out here, you're nobody." Jake stayed still, his hands slightly raised to show he wasn't a threat. "I'm just asking for respect." "That's all," the crowd murmured again, the tension so thick you could almost feel it pressing against your chest. The officer suddenly shoved his arm against Jake's chest, a hard, unnecessary elbow meant to assert dominance. The sound of impact wasn't loud, but the gasp from the crowd was. Jake staggered back a step, catching himself. For a split second you could see it, that instinct to react, that spark of shock and anger in his eyes. But instead of snapping back, Jake straightened up, took a breath, and said calmly, "That wasn't necessary, officer." The cop smirked. "You resisting now?" "Huh?" Phones were raised higher. People were shouting, "He didn't do anything!" "We saw that!" "You hit him!" Jake's friends rushed forward but stopped short when another officer from the cruiser yelled, "Stay back!" Jake lifted his hand slightly, signaling them to stay calm. His voice was controlled, deliberate. "No one move. Just keep recording." That line, "keep recording," sent chills through the crowd. Everyone understood. Something big was happening. The arrogant cop tried to justify himself. He got in my space. He was being aggressive. Jake looked him straight in the eye. "You elbowed me in front of dozens of cameras for no reason. You think that's going to look good on the internet?" For the first time, the officer's confidence faltered. He glanced at the phones, realizing that the whole thing had been captured from multiple angles. But instead of backing down, he doubled down, puffing his chest out like a cornered animal. "You don't tell me how to do my job." "Kid," Jake's expression didn't change. He simply said, "Then do your job with respect." The crowd erupted in agreement, clapping, shouting, recording closer. The officer shouted back, "Everyone back or you'll be detained." But no one backed up this time. Jake's calmness had shifted the energy. The crowd wasn't afraid anymore. They were watching him now, not the officer. A woman's voice from the back yelled, "You can't treat people like this." The cop turned his head for a split second. And that's when one of Jake's friends quietly said, "Bro, it's already viral. Look, thousands watching live." Jake looked around. Dozens of live streams, TikToks, Instagram lives were running. The world was watching in real time. He turned back to the cop, voice low but firm. "You just made a huge mistake." The officer stiffened, eyes flicking nervously between the cameras. His arrogance cracked for the first time. But Jake didn't smile. Didn't gloat, he just stood there, bruised, calm, and dignified, while the entire internet captured the moment that would soon go everywhere. Be honest, if a cop shoved or elbowed you like that, could you stay calm like Jake did? Would you walk away, or would you stand your ground? Drop your answer in the comments, and tell me what city or country you're watching from. The cop muttered under his breath, "You'll regret talking back to me." Jake shook his head slowly. "No, officer. I think you're the one who's about to regret it." He turned to his friends and said quietly, "Don't post it yet. Let's see what happens first." The officer adjusted his vest, trying to regain control, but the shift had already happened. The crowd no longer feared him. They pitied him. He just didn't realize yet that his career, his reputation, everything, was about to collapse in the next few minutes. The atmosphere was electric, heavy with disbelief, outrage, and the hum of recording phones. Jake stood there quietly, brushing the dust off his sleeve where the cop's elbow had hit him. His face was calm, but his silence carried weight. The kind of silence that commands a crowd more than shouting ever could. Someone from the back of the crowd suddenly said it, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Wait. Isn't that Jake Paul?" Heads turned, a few people squinted, then gasped. Another voice shouted, "Bro, that's Jake Paul, the YouTuber, the boxer." And just like that, recognition spread through the crowd like wildfire. Phones were held higher. Comments started flooding the live streams. "Yo, the cop just elbowed Jake Paul. This is crazy. Is this real? That officer's career is done." The arrogant cop blinked in confusion as the energy shifted. He hadn't realized who he was dealing with. He looked around at the suddenly more animated faces, the whispering, the gasps. "What?" he muttered. "What's going on?" A young guy near the front pointed right at Jake. "That's Jake Paul, man. Multi-million subscriber YouTuber, professional boxer. You just assaulted him on camera." The cop's face froze, then twisted in disbelief. "You're kidding." Jake met his eyes. "No, he's not." For a brief moment you could see it. The flash of realization. The panic flickering behind the officer's tough exterior. "You're that guy?" the cop asked, his tone softer now but still defensive. Jake nodded slightly. "That guy who's been recording everything, yeah." The crowd started laughing nervously, cheering him on. The shift was undeniable. The once dominant cop now looked small, exposed. One of the bystanders shouted, "You messed with the wrong person, officer!" Phones were streaming everywhere now. The comments on TikTok, YouTube, and X, Twitter, were exploding in real time. Jake's friend whispered, "Bro, it's trending already. 50K watching live." Jake didn't even look at him. He was focused on the officer. "Doesn't matter who I am," Jake said evenly. "You shouldn't treat anyone like that." The cop's face tightened again. He tried to recover his authority. I didn't know who you were." "That doesn't mean," Jake interrupted quietly. "Exactly. You didn't know. You just saw someone and decided to flex your power. That hit hard." Even the other officers nearby glanced awkwardly at each other. The silence stretched until a woman stepped forward, voice trembling but brave. "I was recording the whole thing," she said. "You shoved him first." "You had no reason," the officer turned toward her sharply. "Ma'am, I suggest you stay out of official business." But she didn't back down. "This isn't official business. It's bullying." A wave of murmurs and nods rippled. Through the crowd, Jake took a slow step forward. Not aggressive, just confident. "You know, officer, people like you are why cameras matter. If they weren't recording, I'd just be another guy who resisted." The cop's jaw clenched. His voice cracked slightly. "That's not fair." "You don't know me," Jake shook his head. "You're right. I don't. But I know what I saw, and so does everyone here." The moment was cinematic, like time slowed down. The sun hit Jake's face as he looked directly into one of the cameras. His voice dropped to a deep, resonant tone that carried across the park. Always record. Always stand your ground, but stay calm. Let truth do the talking. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Some people even chanted his name. The cop looked around, overwhelmed. His authority had evaporated. Every move he made was being documented, dissected, judged in real time. He turned to his partner nervously. We should probably, get this situation under control. But the partner whispered back, Man, it's too late for that. Headquarters is already calling. They know who he is. Jake heard it. He didn't smile, just exhaled slowly, as if he'd known this would happen. He looked at the officer one last time and said softly, Maybe next time start with respect instead of force. The cop's face went red. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. And then, like a punchline to the entire confrontation, a nearby kid yelled, Hey Jake, say gotcha! For the vlog. The crowd laughed. Jake cracked a small smile but stayed composed. Not today, bro. This one's too real. What would you do if someone with authority disrespected you in public like this? Would you stay calm like Jake, or call them out immediately? Drop your answer in the comments and tell me what country or city you're watching from. The cop turned away, pretending to check his radio, but the shaking in his hands gave him away. His arrogance was gone. What replaced it was fear, not of Jake, but of the truth spreading faster than he could contain it. Jake didn't need to say another word. The world was already saying it for him. The clip was live. The hashtags were trending, and the arrogant cop had officially become the villain in his own story. The air felt charged, like the whole city was holding its breath. The arrogant cop stood stiffly in front of Jake, sweat glistening under the afternoon sun. His jaw was tight, his chest puffed out, but his eyes kept darting toward the sea of phones recording him. The balance of power had completely shifted. What had started as a one-sided confrontation was now a public reckoning. Jake Paul, once quiet and respectful, had transformed before everyone's eyes, not by fighting back, but by standing firm. He took a step closer, his voice calm but cutting. You know, officer, I used to think power meant strength, he began. That yelling louder or pushing harder made you right. But today, I see what real weakness looks like. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Jake's voice carried easily, deep and steady. You hit a man for asking a question. You tried to humiliate him in public because you thought no one would care. But here's the truth. People are watching, and they care more than you'll ever realize. Murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. Someone whispered, He's speaking facts. Another said, This is going viral, no doubt. The cop clenched his fists. Watch your tone, he muttered. Jake didn't flinch. No, watch your actions. That line hit like a punch. The officer's face hardened, but his confidence was slipping away with every camera click. Every whispered word, every viral second being captured. Jake took a deep breath. His words measured but full of purpose. You think authority gives you the right to treat people like dirt. But respect doesn't come from a badge. It comes from character. A cheer broke out in the crowd. Some people clapped, others whistled. The cop's partner looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to another. Jake continued, his tone rising slightly now, not from anger, but conviction. There are good cops out there. I've met them. I've trained with them. They protect, they serve, they care. But when someone like you abuses that badge, you stain their honor. The officer looked around helplessly, realizing every word was being immortalized on dozens of live streams. Jake's expression softened, not with pity, but understanding. I get it. Maybe you've had a bad day. Maybe life's been rough, but you don't get to take that out on strangers. The crowd was completely locked in. It wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a message. Every time someone records injustice and stands up to it, the world becomes a little bit better, Jake said. And every time someone abuses power and gets away with it, we all lose. There was a pause, long, heavy, and unforgettable. Then Jake stepped closer, lowering his voice so only the officer and the nearby microphones could pick it up. You could have just asked for ID, man. Instead, you decided to throw an elbow. That's the moment you lost control, not me. The cop swallowed hard. His voice trembled slightly. You think you can lecture me? Jake's tone sharpened, but his composure remained icy cool. No. I'm showing you what accountability looks like. The officer's radio crackled suddenly. A distant voice came through. Dispatch to Unit 4. We've received multiple reports about your location. Please stand by, he froze. That was his department calling. Jake raised an eyebrow. Guess they're watching too. A ripple of laughter and shock went through the crowd. For the first time, the officer's face turned pale. He turned his head slightly, muttering under his breath, "Oh no." Jake looked straight into one of the cameras and said, "To everyone watching, remember this moment. This isn't about me. It's about respect, about how we treat people when no one's supposed to be watching." The crowd cheered louder now. The kind of applause that comes when truth finally wins. The officer's voice cracked as he tried to assert himself one last time. "You're still being difficult." "Sir," Jake interrupted smoothly. "No, officer. I'm being human. You should try it sometime." The cheer that followed was thunderous. The officer flinched, his arrogance completely shattered, replaced with a hollow emptiness that everyone could see. Even his partner didn't step forward this time. He knew the tide had turned. Jake turned to the crowd and nodded once. "You can put your phones down now." "I think the message is clear." A few people laughed. Others clapped again. The tension that had filled the air slowly dissolved, replaced by a feeling of pride. Not for Jake's fame, but for his composure. He didn't need to fight back physically. His words had done the damage. Let's be real. Would you have kept your cool if you were in Jake's place? Or would you have snapped back at the cop after being elbowed? Type your honest answer below and tell me what city or country you're watching this from. I'm reading every comment. The cop looked broken, not physically, but mentally. His pride, his authority, everything he'd built on intimidation had crumbled. Jake took one final glance at him and said quietly, "You can still fix this." "But it starts with an apology." The officer stared back, speechless. His lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. He had been silenced. Not by violence, but by truth. And in that moment, Jake Paul, the man so often criticized for controversy, had just taught the world a masterclass in restraint, dignity, and power. The moment Jake Paul had been navigating with calm precision had reached its tipping point. Phones were raised everywhere, capturing every angle of the confrontation. Live streams were exploding on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and X. Within minutes, hundreds of thousands of people were watching live, thousands more sharing the clips. Every corner of the world could now witness the arrogant cop's behavior. The officer, once the image of authority and control, now looked small. His chest heaved, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. His partner stood slightly behind him, uneasy, eyes darting between the cameras and the rapidly growing crowd. A bystander finally stepped forward with courage. "Sir, do you even realize who you just elbowed in front of dozens of cameras?" The officer blinked. I don't know what you mean." The woman holding a phone lifted it, showing a live stream on the screen to him. "Do you see this? People all over the world are watching. That's Jake Paul, professional boxer, multi-million subscriber YouTuber. You just assaulted him." On camera, for a moment, the arrogant cop's face drained of color. His jaw tightened, but no words came. He had no shield left, no excuse that could save him. Jake's calm voice cut through the tension, measured but firm. "This isn't about me, officer. This is about respect, about how authority should never be abused, and about accountability. You have a choice now, or the world will make it for you." The crowd erupted into applause and cheers. People shouted, "He's right." "And that's so messed up." The officer's phone buzzed. It was a call from his department. The first words from the dispatcher were blunt. "We are aware of the video circulating online. Step aside for questioning immediately." He glanced nervously at Jake. The crowd and the thousands of live stream viewers, realizing the situation had escalated far beyond his control. Jake's friends whispered to him, "Bro, this is trending. Millions watching." "This is insane," Jake nodded, but kept his composure. He turned slightly to the cameras capturing the scene and addressed the audience, speaking as if to millions directly. "You might see this and think it's just about a famous person being treated unfairly. But it's not. This is about anyone, anywhere, standing up when someone abuses power. When you stay calm, when you speak the truth, injustice is exposed. And people notice. The cop's partner tried to intervene, saying, "Let's go. Just step aside." But the officer remained frozen, too embarrassed to move. The entire crowd had turned against him, and the live streams were relentless. Comments were flooding in from every continent. This cop needs to be held accountable. Jake handled that so well. Everyone needs to see this. Jake stepped closer. Voice quiet but deliberate. You elbowed me in public. Abused your authority and thought no one would see. But now the world is watching. It's never too late to make the right choice. Apologize, admit your mistake, and learn from it. The officer looked down at his feet, defeated. The arrogance and aggression were gone, replaced by fear and shame. The crowd's energy pressed on him like a tangible force. Meanwhile, the video went viral, hitting trending pages, news outlets, and global social media feeds within hours. Millions around the world praised Jake for his restraint and courage. Messages of support flooded in. Wow. Staying calm is true power. This is why respect matters more than authority. Jake Paul just taught the world a lesson. Even people who had never followed Jake's content applauded him, not for fame, but for dignity. Jake turned to the crowd one last time. Speaking to everyone watching online and offline, remember this moment. Standing up doesn't always mean fighting back. Sometimes it means staying calm, speaking truth, and letting the world see what's right and wrong. Respect is earned, not forced. Power is given, not taken. The officer, now visibly trembling, was finally guided aside by his partner for questioning. Some bystanders shouted, "Justice is served! Learn some respect, officer." Jake didn't gloat. He didn't shout. He simply nodded, glanced at the cameras, and walked away with his friends, leaving a scene that would be remembered and shared worldwide. The clip exploded online. Millions of views, shares, and comments poured in within hours. The officer's actions were dissected, criticized, and condemned. The message was clear. Arrogance and abuse of power can be exposed, and dignity will always win in the end. What would you say to the officer if you were there in that moment? Type your message below. I'm reading every comment, and don't forget to share where you're watching this from. Your city, your country, so the world can see how far this story reached. Jake Paul had turned a moment of confrontation into a viral lesson in calm, courage, and accountability. The world had seen the truth, and justice, digital, moral, and social, had arrived faster than anyone expected. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the street where the confrontation had unfolded. Jake Paul, calm and collected, walked away from the scene, his friends by his side. The air still buzzed with tension, but now it carried a different energy. One of triumph, dignity, and justice. The officer, once full of arrogance, had been taken aside for questioning. His partner looked uneasy, his colleague humiliated in front of dozens of witnesses and thousands online. Within hours, news outlets had picked up the video. Headlines flashed across screens worldwide. Jake Paul stands up to arrogant cop, goes viral. Police officer's aggression exposed in viral video. Respect versus authority. YouTuber handles confrontation with calm dignity. The clip exploded online. Millions watched. Millions shared. Millions commented. People weren't just reacting to the celebrity involved. They were reacting to the lesson Jake had demonstrated. Composure in the face of abuse, and the power of truth in a connected world. The officer faced consequences quickly. His department confirmed an internal investigation. Public backlash forced immediate accountability. Social media echoed the same message. Abuse of authority would not go unchecked, and dignity could win over aggression every time. Jake, however, didn't bask in the attention. He didn't post a gloating video or make a spectacle. Instead, he released a simple statement across his social media. Power is a privilege, not a weapon. Respect should never be optional, and dignity is stronger than arrogance. What happened today isn't about me. It's about standing up for what's right. The public response was overwhelming. Millions praised Jake's restraint and his calm, commanding presence. Fans, critics, and strangers alike shared messages of support. This is how you handle injustice. Calm, composed, and powerful, Jake showed the world what true courage looks like. Respect is earned, not forced. The video became a global discussion point, featured in news segments, viral social media compilations, and even motivational content about standing up against unfairness. People everywhere started sharing their own stories of confronting injustice, inspired by Jake's example. The moral was clear. You don't need to fight with fists or anger. Integrity, composure, and speaking truth can make a far greater impact. Jake glanced at the crowd that had gathered, now dissipating, and raised a small nod of acknowledgement. The cameras kept rolling, but he didn't need them to see the effect. His actions had spoken louder than any viral clip ever. Could, if you believe. No one should be judged or disrespected because of who they are. Type respect in the comments. Share. Where you're watching from. Let's see how far this message can travel, and subscribe for more real stories of courage, dignity, and standing up for what's right. In the end, what started as a tense confrontation ended as a lesson in courage, humility, and accountability. Jake Paul didn't just defend himself, he inspired millions and reminded the world that respect and dignity are the most powerful tools anyone can have. The arrogant cop's mistake had been captured for everyone to see. The lesson, however, was eternal.